There she
Hey,
is. There she
hold
is.
on a second. This is
The
so
legend
bright.
herself.
Oh, good Lord. Hi, hi.
Hey, how are you
Hi,
doing?
hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's been like a busy, insert amount of month. Yeah, it's been busy. Just life.
Hey,
There's
Big
a lot of.
Lou. Yes, no,
Hey,
you know what?
babe.
It's been a very strange couple of months. I feel like we went from it's going to sound like a breakup. We went from talking every day to like just everyone is so freaking busy and just a lot going on. But that's
Literally.
exciting also because I'm like excited to see where this all goes for everyone. I've been following your stories and I remember the music as well. So I'm excited to like talk more music with you, finally get
Mm,
deep dive into your career.
honestly, get into it.
Yes.
Really good.
Before
Really good.
before I begin, I have to do, a bit of an intro, you know what I'm like. This is a series I'm doing on my blog page called Be the Artist Blog. And I did a series on my personal channel before trying to figure out what it's like being an artist, exploring music for the first time. But this time around, I kind of want to explore what it's like to have longevity in a career in this industry, which
Mm.
we can get into how toxic it is, how difficult and hard it is, but also how rewarding it can be at times. So this is the purpose of the series, but I'm joined with the one and only incredible vocalist, incredible talent, amazing teacher, just an all-round great person. And one of my faves, I have to say, Isabel Bain. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. That was beautiful. You're so
It's
sweet.
what an intro, right?
I'm excited to like finally be here. Honestly, I feel so privileged. It's very exciting.
No, the privilege is all mine. I was actually going back into your live performances on YouTube, which I'm going to get into, but it just
Mm.
reminded me of how honestly your voice is incredible, incredible, incredible. I want to know actually, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. When did you first start getting into music? I know you come from quite a musical background. From well, you
Yeah,
have that in that space. You're in and
yeah.
around it. But when did it begin?
So unofficially, I think I was about 11. I think maybe younger, maybe I was 9 or 10. And my sister, who was the singer, she still is. She was like the singer in the family, and
Right.
it was like my dad and then my sister, and they were the singing people in the family. And my sister and myself, and I don't really know why got asked to sing for a wedding, and did the wedding, and I was like, oh, I'm actually okay at this. This is interesting. This has changed things. And then kind of things started going from there. So I got to like, I think about 11 and like wrote my first song, which was not good, but we played it for years. Like, you know, when it's like the one, that's what you think is this is the peak of songwriting. That was what was in my head was this is the most fantastic thing that I've ever made. And so we did it for years. And then I got to about 13, 14 and was like, oh no, I could actually like, I could do this. This is a thing. Like, I'm actually okay
Mm,
and maybe could be
yeah.
better. And so if I put the time and the work in, this can go somewhere. And that was kind of like, yeah, that was like
Where it
the
began.
plan.
You,
Yeah.
you know what? Did you ever feel the pressure? Because I've obviously come from a perspective where actually, if I don't have like my family aren't musical at all, probably like I don't know
Mm,
what anti-music is, like the reverse of being musical and in rhythm.
yeah.
Um, so for me, it's actually been a lot of pressure, I guess, being the first one to get into that space. But for
Mm.
you, did you ever feel the pressure of actually now there's a standard there because you're a singer, an amazing singer, your
No.
dad, and
Yeah,
okay,
no. Not really. I think my dad's side of the family is really musical. My dad's one of 8, and they're all most of them have kind of ended up in some kind of musical thing or acting or something or something. But like I felt like I was the one where there was like no expectations on what I'd be doing. So my sister was musical. I'm a middle child, so there's 3 of us. My sister was musical. And then my brother was like the athlete. Like my brother was he was gonna go Olympics. He was gonna do all the stuff. My sister's gonna be the one doing like the Grammys and the blood, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I could just pick whatever lane I wanted to. And I think my parents are thankfully super chill. And so when I was like, no, I think that this is what I'd like to do, and I'd like to go and study this and maybe look into doing this like more full time, they were like, okay.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm also a middle child, so I know there's sometimes, although there's
Big up
freedom
middle.
to explore, you know, shout outs to all of you guys. It's still a lot of pressure, I think, because you have the freedom to choose, and you might not be as, you know, strict with an older child, or, you know, as free with maybe the youngest, but there is also a bit of a like, actually I need to find my own way in this space. Did your music ever differ from, like, you know, how your sister's music was, or did you try and do anything different in the beginning?
Yeah, I think massively. I think like you said, I really was like, well, if this is what I'm gonna do, I want to do something that I to do. I think I was like really big on like, I'm finally at the point, you know, we're young and children and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, if there was ever a time for me to do anything and like quit it because I don't like it, now is that time to figure out what do I actually like, what do I want to do, all that kind of stuff. And I spent quite a long time trying to figure out like, what is your niche and what is your genre and what does sounds like, what is the right direction that you should be going in, because you sound like this, so therefore you should be in this genre, or that's what people were telling me. But I liked everything. I was like I mean, when I tell you I liked everything, I mean I genuinely liked everything. I wanted to be in a rock band, I wanted to be in like an EDM group, I wanted to do like the soul stuff, I wanted to do the R&B, I wanted to do country. Like I was like, I want to do everything. And I think it took me like a couple of years, but I was like, no, I can do everything. I can do everything. I don't really understand. Like, I can be me and bring myself into the rest of the things that I actually do enjoy. So I think we did, like, in comparison to not even just my sister, but like other people that I was then in, I went and studied music in college and then university. And so other people in my class, that's when it really started to break away, because I was quite actively going, well, if I want to do everything, then I need to work with people who are different to me. So let's go and work with, you know, which is where I start raving about Scott Reynolds because he's fantastic. Let's go and work with this metal guitarist who I think is super sick, but there's no way I would have worked with him outside of that because he's a metal guitarist and I can't, I mean, I'd love to, but I can't sing metal. So I was like, so let's find this dude and then let's find something that is a bit of him and a bit of me, and we can create something like amazing together, rather than trying to slot into whatever.
You know, it's super interesting that you say that, because ironically you went on to my next question just a very little. I'll answer the question that someone's asked as well on the screen. Oh, it's Lou.
Hi.
When you talk about your music, because I was going to say, actually, when you listen back, there's a lot of, you know, it's not even a mashup, but there's a lot of blend of genres in your music. Like one track doesn't sound like the other, but still has the element of you. Like I find that so fascinating. You have a distinct tone, I think, which is great. But also, like you said, I wouldn't know why you would be limited to doing one genre or the other. I've had a similar experience in terms of trying to figure it out, right? Because you think, there's music I love and enjoyed growing up. There's also a tonal quality. As like an Afghan Londoner that I can't do rock pop crossover. Like why we limit ourselves? Did you ever find anyone telling you that you couldn't do that? And was that something like, how do you overcome some of those barriers when people actually push that on you?
Yeah, I did get a lot of people who said that that's not necessarily you can't do it, but like, oh, that's not a good idea. Sort of, you know, where it's like it's implied that you can't and that you're being a bit silly. And still, to be honest, still now, it's one of the reasons that I've struggled with a lot of artist development stuff, because it often I'm generalizing, so I'm not speaking about every single artist development team and, you know, managerial groups and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to speak on that, but I think often I struggle to find people that understand what I'm trying to do in the way that I'm trying to do it. And they go, because it's easier. They go, it's easier if you focus on this, you bring in this audience, we sort out this image and we make it look like this and this and this, which works for some people. And that's wonderful if that's the direction you want to go in. But if that's not what I want to do, then that's not what I want to do. And I think the issue is that it's not marketable. Right? And particularly if you're looking to get signed and all that kind of stuff, it's not marketable to be able to then go, I actually want to do multiple genres, and I'd really like to merge this session musician with a jazz like pianist, do you know what I mean, and put them together and add it all onto a song. And I'd love to have this song that's kind of sort of R&B or merging into, and this song that's like all polyrhythms and you know, whatever, or very sparse or like super mad or any of that kind of stuff. It's too uppy downy, like they can't put a pen on it.
You know what it is? It's the challenge of either being marketable or being authentic. You can either like really go for who you are as an artist and as a person and put that across, or you can figure it out with the label and say, actually, that doesn't really matter to me. It's more about doing the music and selling the music. So that is really weird. Did you, I mean, to answer Lou's question that he's asked, like, did you ever feel overwhelmed? I know I'm the same. I think me and Lou started at the same time actually with music. That's how we connected. But do you ever feel, and I've already felt this so early on in my career, like really overwhelmed with everything? Like I got to think about this and I got to think about that. Like you've just spoken about, like, how do I market myself? All I wanted to do was sing, you know?
At the beginning, genuinely at the beginning, no, I didn't. I was like, I came in and I think I was very, very, very confident, which would be down to the fact that I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into and like why I was doing what I was doing. It was more just like, I'm just going to do it, which was, it was good. And I'm like, it's nice to have like that foundation of confidence. What has then come after that is a lot of like kind of being massively thrown into the deep end, a lot of forced learning and a lot of catching up. And so I've now spent, 2022, spent like the last 3 years trying to undo the mistakes that I made in the first like 3 years, 3 years, to try and like figure out how to get my point across. The stuff that I'm like, if I'd done this research in the first place and if I'd set that from the go, I probably would have been a little bit better off. But then on the flip side, because I know me, I also would have been massively overwhelmed, which is what's happening now. Is that like I think about stuff and I'm like, and it's like, oh.
What would you then say? Because you say mistake. What do you think were your early mistakes? Because I am the same, and Lou's made a comment as well. Sometimes you just got to jump in and then figure it out. I'm the same, that I maybe overanalyze literally everything that no one actually cares about. And it goes to a point where I'm like, I don't want to do this now, because like I feel there's too many outliers and variables to put this out. So what would you say then is a mistake? Because I don't see that much as a mistake as actually a learning curve of you trying to go through some experiences.
I guess I'm not necessarily saying that all mistakes are bad, because I think obviously we all, like when you're new at anything, you're never going to nail it the first time unless you're the exception. Do you know what I mean? There are some exceptions. We talk about the exceptions as though they're the rule and they're not the rule, and that's a whole other conversation for another time. I think there's little things for me personally that I'm like, if I had known this, or not even necessarily known it, but like if I'd done the research into what I was doing, what I was trying to do, where I wanted to go, and set out like a plan for myself, I would have found it easier when I came to certain obstacles, particularly stuff like marketing and thinking about how to engage like people, not just with my music, but with me as a person, like how to get you on board with, because if you like me, you're going to like most of the stuff that I do generally. Do you know what I mean? And it means that there's a lot more that comes with that, of just like be on board with me and my character and kind of what I'm putting out there. Because then the more stuff that I put out, the more that you're going to be like, oh, well, it's Isabel, I'm going to check it out at least once. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's little things like that, of just like creating just a little bit of a stronger foundation for my entire career.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not too late. I guess in a way, you've been able to then explore music and maybe think less of the marketing side. So as you now creating your brand, you have the freedom to say, okay, I've tried this. This has worked for me. This is what I've enjoyed doing, and now I can focus on this is Isabel, and everyone's gonna love you. Like, that's just who you are. You're a lovable person. So I don't think you'll ever have any challenges there. So I would probably see that as spending years perfecting your craft, and now being at a stage where, and I'm going to talk about your music in a second, but like you're able to, like, if you listen to your first track to where you are now as well, there's definitely some growth. I mean, you still have the same talent, but there's like a sense of like, you actually, even lyrically, there's passion behind what you're saying, or you understand vocally that this works with this kind of instrument. So in a way, I wouldn't say that was a mistake or any detriment to who you are as an artist, but gives you now the time to learn, okay, now I need to focus on the marketing, which I think you can do. You have loads of elements that you're able to kind of utilize, and one of them is videos, because I think you did a video for one of your songs, and I was like, Isabel, we need to see more of this. We need to see more videos. Have you ever thought about, like, because you do also take a bit of a backseat in terms of, hey, this is me. So are you trying to be in front of the camera? Are there any strategies, or what stopped you before? Because you are also a confident person, and you relay messages quite well.
Thanks. I would say the opposite. I think it's a lack of confidence. Largely, I think a lot of me not being in front of the camera is massively intentional on two sides. One is that I get quite anxious about that kind of stuff, and I don't feel confident that I would be able to deliver what is required of me in that story in that way. It's why often not all of the music videos that I have that I'm in are live, because it's easier for me to sing and be in the moment and create the moment for the people, other than it is for me to pretend to be in the moment. I think that's the best. I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's the best way that I can explain it. I think so. That's, I guess, one side. The flip side is that most of the songs that I write tend to be based on true stories, and of those songs, I think maybe 1%, maybe 2% of those songs is actually about me. So I think sometimes I quite enjoy having like music videos and creating content where it feels like anyone could put ownership on this, rather than it like, this is Isabel's story or his experience and her thing. It's why generally I think there's one song and it's slightly different content, but like generally almost all of the songs that I've ever written or released don't have, like, there's no gender assigned or anything, which is one of the reasons, is specifically because I want it to be accessible and open to everybody. Very, very rarely will have me singing about a he or a she or a, like, I try to keep it as ambiguous as possible, so that other people can feel like, oh no, this could be about me, or this could be about that person. Exactly, right? And I think that having music videos where I'm not in them helps, in my opinion, to kind of just loosen it, of like, well, this is just as much about this dancer or this person, this actress, whatever, as it is about the live stuff. Obviously is a little bit different because it's me singing it, so that makes more sense.
Well, you know what, I think the confidence is, you're confident in your craft and who you are as an artist, and I think that's what I mean in terms of now when you're moving into branding, it's like actually that's quite easy. Like somebody who's confident in themselves is
Yeah.
super easy to market. But again, there are other outlets, like you said. To be on camera is a whole nother ball game. Like
Whole
a
thing.
whole nother, I mean, and live
Right?
performances. You spoke about live performances. That's not the same as being in a studio or
No,
singing
not
to
at all.
yourself. You know,
Not at all.
I was watching the performance you did, the live sessions, the Clarendon
Mm.
Centre live performance, and you did Blade Runner. You did a couple of songs, but
Yeah.
Blade Runner is honestly one of my favorites, and your voice is incredible. And I think what that really does showcase, and you have great straight stage presence. It's filmed quite
Mm.
well as well. So, how have you kind of managed maybe that other aspect? So you've done being an artist and being a singer, but actually being a performer, how have you worked on that? And are we getting any live shows? Sorry, that's a lot of questions. But I want some live shows. I need
No,
to
I
see you
like
live.
it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, lots of practice. I think there's a lot of, so I think sometimes people see confidence in whatever aspects that is and go, oh well, that's just a natural thing. It's not. Like I don't know a lot of people who are just like, as adults, as children, sure, or most children are naturally confident, but that's because they haven't been taught the rules of life. And then, you know, the rules of life come
Right.
in, and then suddenly I feel anxious about everything because I don't want to do something wrong. But I think it's relearning or unlearning previous things that we were told, like this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. I had a really amazing couple of teachers at university who were just, I was that person who came on stage and stared at the ground the entire time and couldn't make eye contact, and like either my eyes are closed or like I'm looking everywhere apart from the audience. It's just zigzags all over the place. And I had some really amazing teachers who were just very patient with me and kind of week in, week out were very good at bringing me out of my shell. I think the more confident that I got in my songwriting and with the musicians that I was working with, the more that I felt like every time I went on stage, it was like, oh no, we can do this and we're like good at this and people like this. And that's like my big thing. I was like, oh, people do want to listen to this and they're not being forced to be here and that's okay. Like, it's all good. And so, yeah, a lot of time, I think also, for me, like you said, like the live performance and studio performance is not the same thing. And I think alongside a good performer is a good like vocal performer. It's what comes out with the rest of, whether you're playing or you're singing or whatever. I think that is equal to the performance. I'm never, I will say this, I don't usually say never, but I will say this publicly. I will never be the person on stage who is dancing. Okay? Isabel will never have dancing on stage. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There will be no choreography. I cannot. I like, and I love it. I love dancers. I love dancing. I think it's amazing. It's not going to happen with me. It's not going to happen. So then I'm like, so I have to do something else. There has to be something else that I can do that is going to make this entertaining. So it's okay. I got to find whatever I'm good at or whatever my strength is, or I feel like my strength is, which for me is like, okay, I'm a really good vocalist. So we're going to lock this down. And like, I think the studio stuff is really helpful because you have to learn to be like very succinct with what you do and like come out and just be ready to go. And like performance is that time 20, you get one shot to do this and then you're done. Like,
you know what?
So
it's
that for me was a
really
big thing.
Yeah, no, I think you can tell that from your performance where like it's about the vocals, it's about the music rather than it's a stage performance and here come the dancers and fireworks. It's less about that, but I still think obviously eventually you could incorporate some of that in your stage. Like I actually have had an issue where it's kind of worked the opposite. I've kind of lost confidence on stage, which I don't know what it's down to, but you know, I used to be part of this open mic group where we'd kind of like go out, perform on mic, and it was just free flowing. It was natural to me to perform on stage. And then I recorded music, and I think the lockdown was a huge element of like, now I started to get it socially. Hi Farah, thank you for joining. You know, the for me then being on stage, I think I got a bit of social anxiety. I felt like, you know, like how do I capture an audience Do I look up? Do I look directly at them? And now, to the point where I've actually recently recorded a lot of music, acoustic covers. Guys, stay tuned. But you can see. Hey, Luna. Thank you, Lou, for tuning in.
Thanks, Lou.
But yeah, I think the other thing was now I get paranoid. I get paranoid with just being on stage, and then the vocals start to falter from that. So it's really a catch-22, and I think the lockdown as well has brought more anxiousness. Whereas I think, like, you know, as a, you know, I'm confident in being on stage. That was part of like some of my presenting was done on stage, but this has kind of flipped things over. So it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of learning. Where do you think like is your biggest like point of, you know, learning for 2022? Do you have like a goal, like actually this is what I want to change or want to work on?
Yeah, I think that I definitely need to work on online stuff. I did a couple of online gigs over 2021 and I was like, oh, I am not good at this. This is interesting. I think just learning to interact with a screen, like learning to interact when no one is kind of interacting with you, you know what I mean? That for me was like a really big thing of like, I feel so reliant on other people's response to me. Like if anyone's ever been to any of the gigs that I've done, I used to do a lot of open mics when I kind of first started out, and then when I started kind of planning and organizing my own gigs, one of the big things is like it's the banter. Like we're all here, we're family, we're just here to hang. So like I talk and people will talk back. Like my parents are nearly always in the audience. My dad will heckle, like heckle. You say something, he's out here with bits coming back. And I think I got so, I just got so used to that kind of response, and it's always just quite quick and like chatting, literally chatting in between songs to people and having conversations, that I didn't realize. It was one of the aspects of lockdown that I just didn't realize was like a thing until it happened. And then I was like, oh, no one's saying anything. and because no one's saying anything, I now feel the need to fill the silence. So I'm just going. And what's coming out of my mouth is absolute nonsense. And now my drummer's looking at me like, when is she going to stop talking? We've been ready to start the song for the last 2 minutes. Like, so that for me is like that was like quite a big one of like, okay, I need to work on this. Because then if you feel like you're bad at it as well, it makes me not want to do it. So I'm like, well, you have, this is the part of the job. You got to do this. So let's find ways to do it that works for you. And you can feel like you're actually kind of decent at.
You know, I'm also the same in terms of like, post everything, I was one of those people that felt the need to fill in the silences like constantly. Like I was like, oh, the conversation's dried out, somebody needs to say something. I feel like it almost was cringe when there was silence in any conversation for me. But sometimes you have to take the time to just be like, okay, you know, that's fine, we can pause for now. We can pause, we can take a breath and start again. So a lot to learn. Let's talk Harmonics. Like, what a fantastic track. Like, I am obsessed. I feel like I'm giving you all the streams, and like, honestly, it's incredible. I'm gonna link it in the description. I'm gonna link it everywhere because it's such a beautifully written track. And also, I mean, we'll talk about future tracks. This is like the best to come, because I know I've heard snippets of some of the other stuff and it's incredible. So, but let's talk about Harmonics. How did that come about? Like, what's the meaning behind the songs, and what was the recording process like?
Okay, so we're going way back. So basically, in my first year of university, this was in 2015, I think, maybe 2016. I think 2016. I met this guy called Scott in uni, who's like an amazing guitarist, and I said like, hey, I really, really want to work with you. I've never done this with like, literally, this was like my first time at networking ever. Don't know what came over me, but I'm really glad it happened. yeah, it was just like, I'd really love to work with you. Can I send you some stuff? Sent him the demo of Blade Runner, which is hysterical because at that point it was like just like freshly written, like literally maybe it had been written like a couple of weeks earlier. I sent it to him and he was like, this is sick. We met up and kind of were like, okay, well, let's write together. He wanted to do some more acoustic stuff and I was like, this totally works for me. And that was the beginning of a beautiful, beautiful musical relationship, which continued for about 3 years. And we wrote together. We did a bunch of open mics, a couple of gigs and that kind of stuff. And he's just, he's just a fantastic person. I cannot big him up like enough. He's just a fantastic person. But the first in what was then is now my parents' house at the time was where I was living in Brighton, in the living room with him and my mum, who's also a lyricist. And he was just kind of playing through lots of different instrumental things that he had. And he starts playing this song that he was like, oh, I wrote like 8 years ago with this other guy. And I was like, oh, sick. And he started playing it and I was like, this is the most beautiful thing that I feel like I've heard before, but I haven't. But it just immediately, I was like, I feel like I know exactly what should happen and where this is going to go and whatever. And just thought to myself, we have to write to this song. Wrote a bunch of songs and kind of came back to that. And yeah, and then started, that is now Harmonix, started writing this song. And it was, which was just insane. I mean, I could go on about that entire experience for ages. That was insane. It took me 2 years to write the song. 2 years. So I talk about it in terms of, this is like the decade-long song. This is the song that's taken like technically more than a decade, but a decade for it to be written and to be finished. Then on top of that, in terms of being recorded and actually being released, that's like, it's like 14 years. Anyway, so yeah, so we started writing this song. It's just, yeah, amazing. I think for me, often, I think because of the way that I write, or the way, particularly the way that I used to write with Scott, was very much like, we're just going to kind of like let whatever's in your head come out of your head. Anyone who has spent a lot of time with me will know that I talk a lot about object writing. This is like my version of object writing in the context of co-writing. There you go. And if you don't know what it is, just message me and we can talk about it at a later point, because I'll go into too much of a thing. But yeah, so it was kind of like, well, okay, we're just going to let the words kind of flow. There were lots of different variations of melodies and lyrics and stuff like that. But I think because that's the way that it was written, was kind of like very loosey-goosey, that I didn't really realize, I understood what it was about, but I didn't really realize what that meant to me until like several years later, when I'm kind of like removed from it and just looking back at the lyrics, and I was like, oh, dude, okay, this is like a whole other like game of, yeah, just in terms of writing about relationships. I think lyrically, so far, it was probably one of the best songs that I've written, like lyrically, because I think my brain genuinely felt like it was on another level. I was like, I don't know what happened, but what came out was like fantastic. Yeah, but it's loss of relationship. It's broken down relationships. It's, I think, understanding now kind of my journey with mental health and kind of working through depression and anxiety and family stuff, and just my personal life and me working through what that looks like for me mentally and emotionally. It is also a little bit of like a breakdown of relationship with yourself, breakdown of romantic relationships, breakdown of friendships, and what does that look like from the other side of things after things are finished. I think it's also why it took so long to finish it, because I was like, I know where we're going, I know what the end is, and I know it's broken and we're done. But I don't know what the beginning of this is, and I don't know how we got from point A to point B. I just know that we're at point B, you know?
You know what?
And so working through that.
That's honestly so cool. I mean, Luna has said it. Luna and Isabel are part, if you're watching this on YouTube, back again, they're part of an amazing group and they do object writing. So if you're interested, if you're a songwriter, do join the distro
Love it.
Discord
I love it.
Discord group, which I'll link in the bio. But Luna's part of that. But she also says, as I love it when as songwriters we find new meanings to our songs after some time. And I think that's what I was going to also mention. Like, a lot of artists sometimes say, oh, you know, I recorded this in like 5 seconds, you know, I did this in 2 minutes. But to say I recorded a song in like 15 years sounds really, really like long, but
Yeah.
also shows the perspective and how that changes across the year.
Oh,
And I think
yeah.
that's incredible. Have you done that a lot with your music? I know you take quite a lot of time in trying to develop the songs, as
Yeah.
well as obviously recording and whatever. But do you ever think back, actually, this has completely changed and I'm not in the same position?
Yeah, all the
Feeling?
time. I think all the time it feels like constantly, because there's such a big gap. For most of my stuff, and this might change in the future, but at the moment for most of my stuff, there's like at least a 2-year gap between the song being written and the song being recorded and released. And so often in those cases, it might even be that it's written and a year later it's recorded and then a year later it's released. But I think the space between it changes. I think from me writing it and being in a moment, even if I don't really 100% understand like what I'm working through, to then often spending like a year performing a song but never having it released, and getting like that meaning and getting it kind of embedded into my body and my brain and what that means personally for me, to then recording it and having to get those emotions or that narrative through to people when you can't see me and you're not interacting with me and I haven't given you the long story as to what this is about and why I wrote it and blah, to then releasing it. I think each time it feels like at the time it was this, and then a few months later it was this, and then something else has happened and now it's this, and now it's been released and it's this, and I might listen to it 2 years from now and be like, oh, okay.
You know, that is super interesting. And the other question we have is, obviously, do you ever then suddenly feel disconnected from the song? Like, actually, I'm not in that space and I don't want to either not work on it or release it, or doesn't make sense to me anymore. Do you ever disconnect?
Not generally. There's a couple of tracks that I don't really perform live, for not necessarily for the reason of disconnect, but I wonder if one of the reasons I feel disconnected from it is because I don't perform it. There's a couple of tracks that we've just workshopped, and it just doesn't really work like massively in a live setting. We'd have to like just in a massive way come up with a completely different arrangement for it to work in a live setting.
But we need this, Isabel. We need this. We need to see it. Like,
we need to one day. I'm not. Yeah, it's on. Never say never. But I think at the moment there are a couple of tracks that haven't been. There's one that has been released. I've got a track called "Worn Out," which I do love, and I love the song. But I think that because I just never play it, and I don't really perform it and haven't had that sit in it in that way. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. I just sit there and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Like,
but
yeah. So I think
it is. Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, that it probably is just getting those songs out, trying new arrangements, and figuring out that way. I actually recently did an acoustic version of the songs that I have. A lot of my songs are quite like commercial sounding and really up tempo. And I remember I did a song which is called Trust Me, and I just was like, you know what, the song's a bit like an FU song, it's a bit up tempo. It wasn't that serious, you know, to me writing it. When we stripped it back, I was like, oh my God, like, wait, hold on. Like, why is this making me feel so differently? It was so deep, and that's so powerful that it does that to you, like as a writer and as a performer and as a singer. It does that to your own music does that to you. It's incredible. So I think you do need to do this. We need a whole gig of Isabel. You'll have loads of people. I'll be there at the front row, and I also chat back, so you can chat to me. We have another comment, and it's your hair looks amazing. It looks
Oh,
incredible.
thanks. Thank
It
you.
does. It looks luscious. It looks
Oh,
luscious. We spoke
thank
about, actually, speaking of hair, look, here's the segue, right?
you.
Speaking of hair, we spoke about image and look and vibe as an artist previously. We even explored maybe dyeing your hair. I was kind of like,
Mhm.
"Mate, it should happen. It should happen." Um, have you felt the pressure of the image side of things? Do you ever feel like, oh, I need to do this to look like an artist, and I don't look like an artist? You do?
Yeah,
Um,
massively. Yeah, massively.
and how have you like tried to manage that? Because it is you, but like, do you feel the need to make it a bit more commercial or marketable in that sense? And
Um,
are you gonna dye your hair?
I I don't. So I don't want to. And I think my reminder to myself is always like, no, but you don't want to do this. So why are you doing something that you don't want to do?
Right.
I feel the external pressure to do a lot of this stuff, but I think, yeah, it's just hard. I think one, as a black artist, there's an expectation that you will look, dress, behave, and kind of also perform and write in a certain way. As a female artist, you've got that same
Mm.
expectation. As a plus size artist, there's a whole other bunch of stuff that then comes along with that. And so I I think my instinct is mentally to be like, well, I'm failing on all three of those because I'm not doing that, rather than going, no, but I actually am intentionally not doing this because
Mm.
for me, I always wanted, for me personally, I always wanted to try and do something that I felt that I could maintain like
Yeah.
consistently over the years, because that's my hope, is that my career will have longevity.
Mm.
And a lot of this stuff for me is like stuff that I'm like, I don't know if I could do this when I'm 50 years old. You know,
Right.
I don't know if this looks good, or if these lyrics or this storytelling or like this way of presenting myself to people has longevity. And so I don't
Right.
know how to commit to something that I don't think that I could carry on doing when I'm
But you
30.
know what?
Do you know what I
But you know
mean?
what? On that point though, you did mention like it's just like doing the music, right? You can
Mm,
explore different genres, you can explore different
absolutely.
sounds. Where you are in the moment could be who you are as an artist, right? And even when you look back at 60, you might like actually listen. Thank you, Luna, for tuning in. And hugs back, hugs right back. Yeah, so like even as an artist, you're exploring different genres, and then when it comes to looks, that could also be something that's explored at different points in your career. Like you
Mm,
get artists like
yeah.
Prince. Prince, for example, is a great example of somebody who's almost like a comedian in the way he looked, the way his sound was, the genres he explored. So I don't think never say never, but also
Yeah.
embracing who. I mean, there's so much pressure now on social media to be a certain way, to put things up forward in a certain way. But I don't think you totally need to tear like that apart and start from scratch. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and that's kind of also aligned with where we were talking about before in the confidence. You are quite a confident person in who you are, and
Mm,
that's attracting your audience. They're like, okay, she
mm,
knows what she's talking about. She's really engaged with her audience in a way that's authentic and not just, hey, I'm sending a song, please like my
yeah.
stuff. And the look
Yeah.
can be a part of that, exploring genres that maybe a lot of black women don't explore because they keep getting pigeonholed into certain genres, you know.
Mm,
So that's groundbreaking in itself.
yeah.
And yeah, I think, do, like you said, do what you feel you want to do, but also don't
Mm,
limit yourself in saying, okay, this is who I am today, because we're multidimensional. You can be
I
anything you
mean,
want.
like it.
On that note, what can we expect for you in the future? I've heard snippets of some music. I keep talking about it because there's that one song you played at the table last year. I can't remember the name, but you know,
Okay.
I'll message you about it. It was like you worked on some songs that
Yeah.
sound incredible. What's next for Isabel? Like, where do you see yourself in 2022, but also like for the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're going big. We're going big. I am currently working on a project that I call the Grief Stories. It is it's about 25, 26 songs in total, going through the 5 stages of grief, which is kind of like my perspective on what grieving looks like, what mental illness looks like, and kind of working through changes in yourself personally, changes in relationships, changes in friendships. Alongside that, I say we because it's never me by myself. We are hoping to put together a documentary, throwing up some prayers, please. Put together a little bit of a documentary looking at grief, mental illness, love and relationships within the Black community, which is quite a big deal to me. Something that's been on my heart for a few years. So if everything goes according to plan, EP1 should be out at the end of the year. Please, 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 we're throwing up the prayers. Yes, EP1 should be out by the end of the year. You'll have some singles kind of coming out throughout the rest of this year. You'll probably get another 2 to 3 EPs next year, and maybe the last one in 2024. This is the plan. This is the plan. With that comes some extremely epic music videos. So gassed about. If you knew what was in my, you would be extremely excited.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some crazy music videos, some live stuff, some stuff with some very, very talented people, maybe some actors. We're going to get some stuff together. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. So we're going big. We're just going to go for the full thing. And then on top of that, I'm hoping to do at least 3 gigs here in some fun places. We're looking at some libraries. It's going to be great.
Oh, okay. We are being spoiled. We're being fed. We are like, the thirst is quenched. You know, this is the year. This is the year. You know, I thought you were gonna say like, oh, I just had like a couple of songs this year. A whole EP. We're getting an EP, video, documentary.
Oh yeah, we're ready to go.
Oh my god. I'm excited. You know, I think, Isabel, honestly, I'm so excited for you. I think you are an amazing talent, and beyond that, also just an amazing person. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been lovely catching up with you. I am going to be, you know, the gigs, you need to let me know. I'm going to stream the music. That's separate.
Come on.
I'm going to be
I've got your number. Well, yeah.
VIP. I'm going to be VIP, okay?
We're ready.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm so excited to see your journey go. So thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.